night we do that.
Are you an Alice Cooper fan, Lance?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I was listening to Under My Wheels 2 days ago.
Actually, Glenn Buxton has a blues influence, and Wayne, we just want to promote your project here.
Yeah, it's great.
And
Severed
Angel is Wayne's project. All right.
very
wow.
All right, go do the
You didn't have to
introduction.
do that, Manny. I'm going to. I'm doing the live share right now that we're going to be on.
All right.
Let me put the intro on, and then we will be right back. Let's go. They changed everything. What are they doing to me here? All right, here we go.
I just want some water.
Oh, yeah.
It's time for Let's Sell and Review with your hosts, Wayne Moon, Greg Narlow, and Lou Bass.
That is the creepiest intro ever, Wayne. I tell you that every week.
What's so creepy about it?
Oh, I don't know.
Are you just mad that you're still not on there?
No, I'm happy I'm not on there. I'm pretty scary looking without being a puppet, but thank you.
I'll
Thank
get you
you.
on there eventually.
Uh,
But today we are joined by blues. You're kind of a legend because I'm going through your bio, and you've done so much stuff, man. It's insane. But we're joined by Lance Lopez. Welcome to the show, Lance.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. I thought that intro was killer. I was rocking out over here while it was happening. I didn't think it was creepy at all. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, you got to hear the rest of the song's actually called Frankenweed.
That's incredible, man.
The band's called Frostbite BC. And the bass player who we're kind of friends with, they all have like a gimmick. They all have like a costume and everything. And the bass player, he's called Mandeer, and he's got these antlers on. He looks like a deer. It's pretty cool. Everybody's a different thing. So it's a really cool band. You need to check them out.
Oh my God, I can't wait to check them out.
Yeah, definitely. But we're here to talk about you today. And like I said at the beginning of this, you've been doing this since you were young. You've been since I guess you were like 14 years old, right?
Absolutely, yeah. That's when I started playing professionally. Yeah, down in New Orleans. I was living in New Orleans with my dad. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So you were all over the place. You were born in Louisiana, then you moved to Dallas and New Orleans. Is it New Orleans or New Orleans?
However you choose to say it.
Yeah, and then like I said, by the age of 14, you started playing in local clubs and local bars. Give me what was it like playing at 14 years old in the clubs and stuff?
I mean, man, it was a trip. I mean, I was always gravitating towards playing in a bluesy style anyway. Growing up as a kid in the 80s, and everybody was shredding. Yeah, and I played much more bluesy, and my dad started me off on kind of early rock and roll, 50s rock and roll. So I kind of played in that style, and then I discovered Hendrix, and everything else is kind of was over from there. And so moving to Dallas at 12 with my mom and seeing B.B. King and Stevie Ray Vaughan play together kind of set me on a course I was like, man, I want to play the blues. And so I kind of just started from 12 years old with Robert Johnson and Son House and Blind Willie McTell and all that kind of music. And then just moved my way forward through Chicago blues in the 50s, Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, to Paul Butterfield, into John Mayall, then into Cream and Zeppelin, and then trace the whole thing back. Yeah. So that's kind of how I discovered it. I mean, I discovered Robert Johnson by hearing Cream for the first time, hearing Crossroads and just being pinned to the back wall of the bedroom with the Wheels of Fire album in my hand. And looking at Crossroads and seeing Robert Johnson, and so I knew that there was a basis of that. And somebody had explained to me that it was an old blues song that they had taken and done that with. And so I knew that I had to go back that far. And there was no internet back then. It was the library and talking to people.
The Dewey Decimal System.
So yeah, it was like that, from there on out. So by the time I was 14, I moved down to New Orleans with my dad, and he had heard how, much better I'd got playing and how much into the blues I was. And he said it was time to go out and start playing. So he took me around to some bars and some clubs, and some bands hired me, and I started playing, every night from like 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then I would go home and sleep for 2 or 3 hours and then get up and make it to class by 8:30, before the first bell rang, and then get out of school at 3:30. And then the first gig started like 5 to 8. And then it was like 9 to midnight. And then it was like 2 to 5, we would do the happy hour, the normal gig, and then the after hours gigs. So, because, bars never closed in New Orleans.
Really? Okay.
So it was just round the clock, man. So it was just like, as a kid, it was just great. And it was great because I had all that energy, and I absorbed everything, and I just wanted to play as much as I could. So I got to play with all these great musicians in the French Quarter and all over New Orleans. It was cool.
Yeah, that's freaking awesome, man.
That is
especially
awesome.
Getting to start that early and playing in the clubs and stuff like that. That's insane. I started playing drums when I was about like 10 years old, but I never got to that, that point of, doing all that stuff. So that's hearing that you were able to get in there and do that. It's awesome. Was your father a guitar player too, or your mother or anything in your family?
No, my dad, no, he was, he actually, it's a funny story. He was in the Army with Elvis Presley, and
really?
He and Elvis Presley had known each other from Shreveport, the Louisiana hayride before that. And then, as fate would have it, they were stationed together, and they remembered each other from meeting at the Louisiana hayride. So it was just this crazy thing. And one of my earliest memories was my dad showing me footage of Elvis, and that's how I wanted to play guitar. I saw that, and I was like, dude, I need a guitar. I want to do that. And that was it for me, and it just so happened that, it was always more like it was our family friend and not this icon, because, there was just these photos with my dad and Elvis. I mean, I actually got more photos of my dad in the Army from Elvis's estate than like almost that my father had. And my dad had some photos of them, on base together, and it was pretty cool. And I saw a lot of that stuff before my father passed away, but it kind of resurfaced again. But yeah, it was, and so that was kind of the thing. He always supported it. I think that friendship kind of helped him support me being a musician, that not that he was a musician, but that helped support it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
Well, so I saw a great quote here. One of my favorite guitar players who I actually saw with Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jeff Beck, described you as very exciting and intense blues guitarist. How blown away were you when the great Jeff Beck said that about you?
It was pretty monumental, man. It was great, man. Jeff was amazing. I was talking earlier today about Jeff, and I was saying how fortunate I was to see him this last show in Nashville with ZZ Top. Having worked with him all those years ago as a young artist, and I've known other young artists from Texas that have also had the opportunity, to work with Jeff early on as well. I just learned so much, man, and the stories were so great, and I just didn't even know that he was aware, and didn't even think to. I mean, it's like, oh my God, ask Jeff what do you think? Like, really? Like, and the management that I had at that time, I called and got that quote, because I was like, man, I didn't even think he was aware of what I did. I know that he just guided me on what Marshalls to use and like what kind of live rig he felt like I thought I needed. And I still use that rig today. I mean, he turned me on to the JCM 2000. It's my fly rig. It's the amp rig I used, the Supersonic Blues Machine, or all the, so it was all the stuff. And I learned a lot of things and heard all the great stories. And I was really just so blessed to be able to see him this last time. And, when I saw Jeff this last performance, I knew that it was special. I didn't know why. I didn't know it was going to be the last time, but I knew it was special. And I got to take a young guitar player who had never seen him live, and we had seats right down front. I mean, literally 10 feet away. And I got to take a young guy that didn't know anything about him, and just got to watch him just sit there and not be able to move. That was the gift, So,
yeah,
love Jeff, and yes, what a blessing, what an honor.
I got to see him live one time, man. I was 19 years old, 89. It was a co-headlining tour with Stevie Ray Vaughan. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Wow.
But they would alternate. I'd never seen Stevie Ray Vaughan in my life, you know. Jeff Beck to me was a pioneer of so much style of music that I love. Anyway, I was kind of pissed because at the show I went, Jeff Beck was opening. I was insulted. How can Jeff Beck open for anybody?
Yeah.
Right.
But I was talked into staying for Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I did. But what blew me away about Jeff Beck is within one song, he could go for something like Pork Pie Hat or Lead Boots, which combine, you know, jazz and hard rock to pure jazz. Then he would throw in electronica, you know. This is during the Jeff Beck's guitar shop. And I admire the man because even in his 70s, he never stuck to his style. He kept moving forward. He could have easily reformed the Jeff Beck group and made millions. Now, he made a lot of money, but obviously for him, it wasn't about money. It was about, you know, anyway, I admire that a great deal. And I think that's why I brought that up, because I thought that was really cool. He, you know, you got, he gave you a quote. So, Lance, you've been playing since you're 14 years old, blues. Now, I discovered blues because of Led Zeppelin, Cream, and Jimi Hendrix. I discovered it secondhand, much like you did. Like, you know, I would see the songwriting credits, but I was about 16, which isn't that far from 14, but it's still a big leap when you're that age. So when at 14, you know, a young kid is into the blues, what in your opinion touched you about that music?
Man, I don't know. You know, I remember going back as far as being a toddler in Louisiana, and I know the exact intersection of where it happened. And I remember us pulling up to a stoplight and seeing an African-American gentleman on the front porch with a straw hat, with an acoustic, with a slide, singing and playing Delta blues. And I remember asking my dad, like, and I remember as a child going, this is the greatest sound I've ever heard in my life. Like, you know, wow. And so, you know, and I would just remember my father always kind of, you know, me having questions about that. I know that my dad starting me on Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and those kinds of records kind of started me in this style. So, learning to play from those records already starting in the blues format. And then getting into the 80s and seeing all the great bands like Rush and Kiss and AC/DC and Van Halen live, you know, and that was really the style, and all the kids in the neighborhood that played guitar were playing that style. And I was kind of reverting back to like the generation before and like the bands we just talked about. And that's how I was, like you say, I was discovering the blues, and I was really drawn to that. And my friends would say that, like, you're playing way too bluesy, like it wasn't cool. Like, man, you play too bluesy. And I came home and told my dad that, and he turned me on to B.B. King. And then it was like the rest was history. Like, he put on a B.B. King record, and I was like, oh my God, and then like Angus Young and all these other guitar players began to make sense. I was like, wow, that's the same lick that Angus Young played on this. And that's what B.B. King's playing. You know, and I started to really start to understand kind of the lineage of how it was the influence kind of flowed. And so, you know, and it wasn't until, I mean, it was 12 years old for me. I mean, finally moving to Dallas and seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan and B.B. King. Same like you, I went to see B.B. King, and we went to go see B.B. King, and B.B. King came out early. And it was like, what? And you know, Irma Thomas and Dr. John were on the gig. I think Joe Cocker was actually on the gig as well. Wow. And they had all played, and, you know, B.B. King came out. And I remember being a 12-year-old kid, and we were there, and everybody had these T-shirts that had SRV on, and like literally everybody there. And I went, what does that mean? I was like, what is that? And I remember I was like pissed off about it. Like, I remember like, I was like, what is SR? And man, I had no idea. And then I remember thinking, like, you know, Hendrix, like, I was like, nobody has ever attempted to play Hendrix I'd ever seen live. And I was like, that was something you didn't do. Like, you just didn't. And then when I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan play Voodoo Child, it was like, oh my God. So, you know, I after that show, I deep dove into the blues. I saw B.B. King and Stevie Ray Vaughan play together. So I would go hang out at Charlie's guitar shop. I asked around a couple of guitar shops, you know, and they were like, oh man, they all hang out at Charlie's. So I would take all my Jimi Hendrix records and my wah-wah pedal, and I would go hang out, and they would be like, man, Stevie Ray is going to love this kid. Bob Fald and Mark Pollock and all those guys down there. And then the first day of school, man, bang, you know, he was gone. It was crazy, you know. So it was just a crazy thing. So I was really fortunate to kind of grow up and know, you know, a big circle of guitar players in Dallas and be taken under the wing and influenced by a lot of great players, and, you know, meet and know a lot of the great Texas blues players, you know, from early age. And then, like you say, going to New Orleans and playing, and then coming back to Texas and being in the Texas blues scene was great early on for my career.
Did you find the scene in Texas and New Orleans very different as far as musical styles? You know, since you're it's because your style is definitely blues, but it's modern blues. I don't consider it. You don't sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan, which is good. You sound like Lance Lopez, which is what you're supposed to sound like. You know?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but no, I'm serious, because I took a deep dive when Wayne said, you'll like this guy. And then Wayne was, well, you're right. I do like his music. So Wayne knows me pretty well. So did you find that, what was, I guess, the main thing you learned from both scenes? Because to me, they would be very different. Am I correct in that?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, there was just much more funk, R&B based, you know, boogaloo, more jazz, more, you know, R&B in New Orleans. And then back in Texas was just straight traditional. You know, you think of Jimmy Vaughn, you think of the Fabulous Thunderbirds, you know, that sort of, you know, really traditional Texas blues. You know, Doyle Bramhall, Anson Thunderberg, Jimmy Vaughn, you know, those were the guys that, you know, that we kind of grew up around in Texas, Austin and Dallas and Houston playing blues. So, you know, Stevie Ray had passed at that time. And so a really good friend of his, Smokin' Joe Kubek, also is another great blues guitar player, is no longer with us, was a very close friend of Stevie's. And there was just so many guys, Bugs Henderson. And, you know, so right after that, I mean, you know, at 13 years old, there were two clubs in Dallas. There was Poor David's Pub, and there was Blue Cat Blues. And so the owners back then, there were the payphones. You remember the payphones over by the bathrooms? You know,
certainly. I'm old enough to remember.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And so we were allowed to go stand by, like David Carr, Doug Henry. They would let us sneak in, and we would go stand by the payphones, and they would go, "Don't move. Like, stay by the payphones. If you move, you got to get out." So, because if somebody came in, they would go, "We let those kids in to use the phone." So we got to get in and see Albert Collins and Gabe Mouthed Brown and all these guys and we were just standing by the payphone, just like, oh my God, you know, watching like Albert Collins walk around with a 100-foot cord. We were just like, we couldn't move, you know, at 13 years old, it's sitting in Poor David's Pub. So we got to see all the great players like that, man. You know, Anson Thunderberg when Mike Judge was playing bass, right when he started drawing Beavis and Butthead. You know, it was crazy. It was crazy times, man.
See, I just learned something. I didn't know Mike Judd was a musician.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I did not know.
Oh, a heavy duty bass player on the Texas blues scene back then, man. He played with Anson. It was just amazing blues, man. It was just so great to be around as a kid, man. It really was.
Wow, that's really cool. So,
yeah, I forgot that Mike Judge was a musician.
I can see that little
great bass musician, but he was a bass player back then. He played upright as well, mainly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, those upright basses, Lou Reed, Walk on the Wild Side.
Oh man, wow.
Yeah, that's an upright bass. You know, that's what gives it that sound, you know.
Fretless slides on that.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. Oh,
it is, man. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you mentioned Hendrix, and I practically worship Hendrix. I literally have 75 or more Jimi Hendrix related, mostly live stuff.
Oh my God.
You know, he's one of my favorites. And as I get older, I'm 53. As I get older, what amazes me, and we're going to talk about you, not other artists, but what amazes me
yeah, but
about,
I'm like, we need to talk after this because I want to hear some of this Hendrix live stuff you got.
well, this 20, as I get older, what amazes me is that he was only 27 when he died,
Right.
and that he was able to create this body of work in 3 years.
Oh, I know.
So
I know.
you as a musician, because again, you don't sound anything like Hendrix either. You sound like Lance Lopez. What did you, either as a songwriter, because I think he's underrated as a songwriter, or just as a musician, what do you feel that you got from Jimi Hendrix?
Oh my gosh. I mean, just the inspiration, creativity of the guitar and blues, the creativity of the blues and the expression of it in a way of a very free flowing way of playing guitar, from your heart and from your soul. I think that was the thing that Hendrix really, kind of inspired the most in me, was to connect, that whole channel, and to play that way. And then the writing and the body of work and the arranging and just, I said this morning, I was listening to Electric Ladyland this morning, and I told somebody as I was listening to it, I was like, still today, I mean, all these years later, it's still mind blowing. I mean, especially when you think back to the technology that was available, to them, and the recording, capabilities they had and how limited they were. And I mean, it's like the equivalent of like a Tascam,
right. Yeah.
I mean, it was nothing. It was nothing, and it's like, and to accomplish that.
You would hear these crazy stories about Eddie Kramer holding a pencil, and then Hendrix holding the tape with a pencil on the other side to get that mermaid. 1983, a Merman We Should Be. So I was just I was looking at your first release came out in 1989. So was Grooveyard Records your label, or was that already an existing label?
Well, it shouldn't have been 89. It's 98
or 98. I apologize.
Yeah. I was like, wow.
Yeah. I didn't think it was that old. Is he my age?
That would have been. It was.
What record did
he was 10. He made his first album at 10.
He was making albums out of the womb.
That's right. They call it late for class blues.
So was that your own label, indie label, or was that an existing label?
Yeah, Grooveyard is based. They were based out of upstate New York in Rochester. They're still up there. They're still an existing label. They put out a lot of blues influence, real psychedelic kind of funk rock, blues rock, hard rock kind of guitar based music. That does really well overseas and kind of in the niche market and indie market, and kind of the cool stoner metal kind of vibe, But we did a lot of really great, like my early records were done on that label, like a lot of really great guitar based jam records, very riffy, very heavy, good guitar kind of fun.
Were those records, were you still finding your and I was just looking through, unfortunately I didn't listen to these yet, but I'm going to after we get off this thing. Wall of Sound is First Things First. Were you doing more of a jam style at that point, or were already doing the blues that you're known for today?
Yeah, no, it was blues rock. I mean, the first record, that First Things First, I did with Buddy Miles. So Buddy and I worked on that record, and we worked on a lot of riffs and wrote a lot of music for that record. So it is very influenced in that way. And then the second record was also connected to the Band of Gypsies in a way that Eric Gales and I were commissioned to write a bunch of songs for a Band of Gypsies record that Billy Cox and Buddy Miles were going to do, would feature a lot of great guitar players like Steve Vai and Slash and these other guys. But they didn't want them just doing the same old Foxy Lady and Purple Haze and Hey Joe and all the Manic Depression and the same songs over and over again. They wanted new original material to play. So Eric and I were in Memphis and wrote all this material, and then the record didn't end up happening. So we were sitting on all this material. So we just said, hey, let's cut this Wall of Soul record. And so we went back to the Dallas Sound Lab, where I did the record with Buddy Miles, where, the Sound Lab was great, man. Is where Stevie Ray, they did Soul to Soul with Stevie Ray, Double Trouble, and the Family Style record. And David Bowie had cut a bunch of stuff in there, and Phil Collins. And There's this great studio, the big A room with the SSL board that I pretty much learned how to, work in a studio on. And so we went back there and cut all those tracks and ended up cutting a track with Doug Pinnick from King's X. He came up from Houston when they were still in Houston.
Wow. He's
so
great.
Doug came up, and so it was me, Eric Gales, and Doug Pinnick, and my drummer did a track for the album, and came out amazingly. So I was really proud of that record. It was really influential to a lot of guitar players in blues rock, younger guys, and a lot of guys here. I find here in Nashville that play with country artists now, the guys like in their 30s or late 20s, and they come up to me when I meet them here in Nashville, and I see them play with these big country artists, and I'm like, holy cow. And then I meet them and they go, yeah, dude, I had Wall of Soul, man. Wow. And I'm just like, holy, I didn't even believe anybody even heard that right. I was like, wow. And I hear it all the time from the young guitar players here in town that go, dude, that real Wall of Soul record, dude. Like, wow.
Well, Lance, you just sold 2 more copies when we hang
They're
up.
right.
I'm buying the first. I'm buying the first 2, and I'm going to buy the newest one you put out. So I'm going to get 3.
Awesome. Thanks,
but Buddy Miles,
yeah,
Jimi Hendrix's Band of Gypsies drummer, the man Mitch Mitchell, who didn't play on that album, called the cement mixer.
Right.
That's what he used to call Buddy Miles, the cement mixer. So what would you say you learned playing with these old cats like Buddy Miles? Not, I mean, he's mostly known for Band of Gypsies, but he had his own solo career with a couple of hits in the early 70s, including Them Changes that Band of Gypsies did. So what would you say you as because you had to be a really young guy when you did that. I mean, what did you learn working with these older musicians who not just a generation, almost 2 generations removed from what who you were?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. Great question. I met Buddy when I was 19. I met him at the Pure Rhythm and Blues Festival in Belgium. I was playing guitar with Lucky Peterson. And because I had played with like Johnny Taylor and Will Milton and Bobby Bland and these guys as a kid, he recognized these certain chord voicings I was using. So he knew, and it was crazy because when I was doing those gigs as a kid, that's when I found out that Jimi Hendrix and him and several other great musicians had been on that same circuit. I didn't even know that till I was there. And the people that were still there 30 years, and you had to think that was only 30 years before. So, it was really crazy. And I had no idea that was even a thing. And so, Buddy and I immediately connected instantly. And he moved to Fort Worth, and he had a house on Byers Avenue that we called the Byers House. And it was a great ranch style house. It had a drum kit, and we surrounded the drum kit with backline. We had Marshall stacks and Fender Twins and bass rigs and a PA, and it was just round the clock jam sessions. And so Buddy and I would write and jam. And Buddy, we'd get a twin reverb, and Buddy would play bass upside down left-handed. He'd plug into one side, I'd plug a guitar, and then we would just write riffs. And man, we wrote so many riffs during that time that I still have riffs that I haven't even. And his daughter contacted me like 2 years ago, and she was like, we just found a bunch of tracks that you and Buddy cut. And she said, and I was like, wow, I didn't even remember doing it. And she sent it, and she was like, we would like to release this and at some point. And so there's stuff out there that I didn't even remember us recording. We were just working and recording and doing so much back then. So that's what we did. And we just wrote and we jammed, and I learned a lot of what to do and a lot of what not to do, and and we had a lot of ups and downs, and drugs had a lot to do with that. But yeah, it was pretty crazy for a lot of times. There was a lot of times that were really, really good though, man. And we had a lot of great moments musically. And what was so cool, and I had my little guy, and I'll say this about it, and we can move on. But my guy that I grew up playing in my first bands with, when we first heard Band of Gypsies, I had this epiphany. I told him, I said, dude, one day me and you were going to play with Buddy Miles. And he just sat there and looked at me. And 8 years later, we were standing on stage with Buddy playing Who Knows to a sold out Gypsy Tea Room. And I said, I told you. And he was like, and Chad passed away 2 years ago now. He just passed. He got a bad illness, and he passed on. but it was really cool that that happened for us. And, you know, we had that experience in our life. So Buddy was amazing. You know, Buddy and I, we partied our ass off. We jammed our asses off. And I still have a lot of music that we wrote together that I hadn't even recorded yet.
Well, hopefully it'll see the light of day because it'd be really interesting to hear it, you know.
Yeah, man.
And Band of Gypsies, in my opinion, we had a thing on greatest live albums, and I believe that was my number 1 or number 2 pick. I can't remember. But God, my friend said it was number 1. So, well, I mean, that song Machine Gun, Machine Gun, you know, and then, so I don't mean to get outside, but so 2 artists of the 60s never protested the Vietnam War, at least not vocally. One was Jimi Hendrix and the other one was Jim Morrison. The reason Jimi Hendrix didn't, because he had friends in Vietnam and he also was a paratrooper. So he had a lot of respect for men in the military. And even though Jim Morrison was wild and crazy, his dad was an admiral. They didn't talk, but he respected what his dad did. Right. So he wasn't gonna, but both men in song wrote about the war. Unknown Soldier, The Doors, and Machine Gun, which is to me is the greatest protest song ever without actually saying the word Vietnam or mentioning any names or even getting political. He's talking about the spiritual side of what warfare does. Machine Gun, you know, incredible stuff. Sorry about that, Lance. I didn't mean to get off on a tangent like that. By the way, Lance, that gentleman right over there, his name is James.
James.
Yes. Hey, how you doing?
It's his birthday today.
Yes.
Happy birthday, James.
Thank you.
And he's a big blues fan. And James, by the way, he mentioned Angus Young being blues, and James is one of the first people who said Angus Young and Bon Scott were bluesmen. So James said it before.
Oh, definitely. And also, you know, a guy from East, I live in East Tennessee. You're in good old Nashville, right? You know,
I'm
right
in Nashville. Yeah.
Honestly, the first question I had to ask for you, because you're talking about your influences and everything. Did you ever listen to any Dr. John, being from Louisiana? Oh
my God, yeah. I mean, Mac. I mean, my nephew was living next door to him there a few years before, you know, right when he passed away. I used to see him all the time. Dude, I was talking about it earlier today. I remember being at a blues festival with Mac when I was a kid and drinking Junior Wells's beer. And then like Mac coming out, and I was in trouble. And they're like, "Get over here, boy." And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like I gotta hide from Dr. John. I'm in trouble.
The voodoo man gonna get on you.
Oh, dude, it was like hide. You see Dr. John, it was like, "Oh shit!" Like, get out of here.
Yeah, see, that's something like I grew up. My whole family are from the Bay, California, and then they moved out to Tennessee, and so I was all raised on. You know, the Southern blues rock and like the Guess Who, and also a bunch of Dr. John and Hot Tuna and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my influence in life as a kid. So anytime I hear blues, and honestly, this album that you came out with, man, it is so bluesy. I enjoyed the hell out of it. So
thank you, man.
Like, you know, all I could hear, I was like, oh wow, there's some Stevie Ray Vaughan in there. Oh, there's this, you know, I'm just like, oh, there's this and that. I just nitpick every little thing in there, and I was like, oh, this is great. So I was enjoying the hell out of it. So. But that was my first thing. It was like, yeah, you got any good
birthday, my man. They said it was your birthday, man. Happy birthday.
Yep, turned 39 today, and I was just getting done with my college football show, and I was just jumping right back in here because I was like, I'm not missing this one. So,
right on, man. I'm glad you made it.
James is a blues guy, more so than I am. So
no, I mean, I'm the sicko who bought the '96 Ann Arbor blues CD from Third Man there in Nashville. So,
oh, did you really? Wow.
Oh, dude, I was like, me and my wife walked in there, and I was like, oh, there's that. Okay, I want that. Leo Redbone. Okay, I want that. I want that.
Wow.
I was like, what are you buying? I'm like, buying blues. Just let me be.
And on CD, you usually don't buy anything on CD. You're usually
no. I don't, especially not Severed Angel on CD. Absolutely.
Well, Lance, that's why I'm glad James came on, because as soon as you mentioned Angus Young, I go, that's funny. James, you're the only person I know who's ever, outside of myself, called Bon Scott a blues singer. For that, James and me will be friends for life. Just for that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I see it in a lot of artists, and you know, unfortunately, like when I first went to Nashville about 15 years ago, it was a much different scene than it is now. Right. And there used to be those blues guys out there. I mean, shoot, you could tell me you don't lie to me and tell me Chris Stapleton wouldn't be a great blues guy.
Oh my God, yes.
And there's a bunch of other, and it's just everything's been incorporated down from there. But I've always loved the blues of obviously Memphis and May and all that stuff going on. I just, was always a BB King, Eric Clapton guy. So but yeah, no, honestly, you hear the 4/4 chord and you're like, okay, there's blues.
Right. That's awesome, man. That's incredible. So yeah, well, cool, man.
Lance, I'm at a friend's house. He's a young, he's about 16. He's a great guitar player, and he wanted me to ask you a question. Okay. What kind of guitars and equipment do you use?
Well, the main guitar that we're using right now is the 65 reissue Firebird. It's a VOS Pelham Blue. We call it the Blues Bird. And it's a really cool build they did at the custom shop several years back. And they put like a Les Paul shaped neck on it, which is really cool. So the Gibson custom shop has what's called the made to measure program. And so if you can think it up, they'll build it for you. So if you want a Les Paul with a Flying V neck on it with that pointy headstock, they'll do that for you. So anything you can think of, Les Paul with a Firebird neck, a Firebird with whatever. So that's what this Firebird came out to be. It's a normal, Firebird, but it's got a bigger neck and it feels like a big chunky, Les Paul neck. And then I've got also a great R9 Les Paul that they built. We call the Creaker. It's the Barton Creek Burst. It's a 1959 reissue with the specs also built with made to measure from Gibbons guitar, from Billy Gibbons Pearly Gates, and from Jimmy Page's #1. So it's got specs from both Les Pauls combined. Hang on one second.
He's going to show you. Come over here.
Oh, that's great, man.
We got it right here, man. Hold on. Let me get this live in concert right here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
That is beautiful. Does that thing weigh a ton, or is it nice?
No, it's a good weight. It's about 8 pounds.
Oh, it's not
but they call it a sweet pea burst. So it's a lot like Pearly Gates. But it's got some attributes of #1. But this is probably the main jam right here.
That's great, man.
Oh, this is the Lance. This is the young man who wanted to ask you the question. That's cool.
Oh, great. How you doing, buddy?
And
a huge
is that a
Queen
Brian
fan.
May guitar?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, man. Yeah, bring us to get that in.
That is too
look.
Cool.
It's even got the. What the heck did he make this of? Saddlebag?
It was a saddlebag holder.
Yeah. That is too cool, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he's always playing.
You got to play some Tie Your Mother Down now.
Oh,
man.
Don't tell him to do that. We'll get copyright strike. He'll do it.
I already got the copy strike for Eurovision this year. Okay?
Yeah, we'll get copy strikes on there.
Oh,
sorry, edit that out.
Lance, I was watching an interview with you on another podcast, and you were talking about when you went to a NAMM show, and you brought your Flying V and you handed it to somebody.
Yeah,
tell the guys about that story, and then
my gosh,
that
because
Cole's gonna like this story. Tell him, get him back.
Well, basically, yeah. So I had a friend of mine. He asked me to come to a party, kind of a pre-NAMM hang at in Anaheim somewhere, and I walked in, and he said, "Bring that white Flying V you have," and so I did. And when we walked in the door, it was just this epic hang happening. And we walked in the door, they just kind of pulled the guitar out of my, here, we'll take your guitar and take it this way and blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, pulled me the opposite direction of the room to meet these other people in this microphone company and these other gentlemen at this party. And so I kind of made the rounds and talked to people. And I came back in the room and there was the Flying V on the table taken apart with stuff off of it.
Oh
and I was like, well, what? And it was Thomas Nordig, who was Steve Vai's longtime, forever lifelong guitar tech. So it was like Thomas Nordig. So it's Steve Vai's guy. So like, what do you do? Like, you're like, but my guitar's apart, but it's Thomas Nordig. So like, what do I really say? And so they just totally replaced it with all this Graph Tech gear, new bridge, new tuners, new nut, knew everything. They just rebuilt the guitar, totally rebuilt it, put these graphite saddles on it. And and totally sent me on my way, and it just held. And then I met the Graph Tech company people, but it was like, I was like, man, were y'all gonna ask me if that was cool or?
That's what I was gonna say. Did nobody asked you? They just did
it about it at all.
And what if you weren't happy with it? What were you? What would they do?
Yeah,
I don't think you say anything bad about it.
Pull it all back off and put it the way it was. I was like, dude.
Yeah.
And nobody touches my guitar except for me. I
don't know if you guys know who Robin Ford is, but same thing happened. Robin Ford was doing some gigs with us with a band I'm in, and he had a vintage 63 Telly, and my tech was working for me. And he hands it to my tech, and he goes, "Here, set my guitar up." And me and him went for a walk, and we came back, and my tech had the neck off the guitar. And we came back, it was in two pieces, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And Rob was like, "What are you doing to my guitar?" And I just was like, "Oh my God."
That's sad. I feel bad.
It was brutal. It was so brutal, man.
That's like an episode of Punk'd.
Really.
It was rough, man.
You ever look at those old Who videos and see those guitars he smashed and start crying? Because I did. I start crying.
You have to clean your palette with like, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan and like BB King restringing a guitar right in the middle of a solo, you know.
Right.
That's beautiful.
That's the palette cleanser, right?
That is a palette cleanser. If there's anything
that's
like
the
that,
reset button. The blues reset for the blues or something. I don't know. We got to come up with that title.
That's amazing when you listen to some of those old blues live albums. You know, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf.
Yeah,
you know, they sound great, and then they'll stop and go, "Time to tune up," and they'll sit there and literally, you know, tune up, or
every sixth string. Yeah, they'll tune every single string, and they'll just be talking like, "Oh, you know, we're doing this thing here." Ding, ding.
Yeah, well, that's some of my favorite Jimi Hendrix moments on live albums, bootlegs. Only cowboys stay in tune, and you'll see him. And you'll hear them tune up and hit, and you know, it's incredible.
That's the best thing about the Woodstock, the original Woodstock vinyls, was that you could hear them doing that stuff right in the middle of it. You know, with the silly PSAs of, "Hey, don't do the brown acid."
What was it like opening for BB King? Because you know, you got to see him and everything, but you actually opened for him. So what was that like?
Exhilarating. I mean, just, you know, incredible. Those crowds are incredible. Playing for those big rooms, and then, you know, the greatest thing for me, our set would go by so quickly, and I had like a stupid amount of guitar amps because we were playing these big rooms.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pull out like every amp we owned. I mean, we literally had, you know, 6 amps going at the same time. It was stupid. And we had Marshalls and Fenders, and I mean, I don't even remember what all else. Matchlesses, one night boxes.
What did BB say about all that?
It was like,
good question.
They were like, do whatever you want to do, man. 45 minutes. Do whatever they were like, we don't get out there, LL, tear it up, man. You got it.
Go out there, tear it up, because
that's what we did. And it was so cool to watch. What was cool to see BB hold 7,500 people in the palm of his hand in that one note. And I noticed that when I was a little kid and I saw him and Stevie Ray play together. Stevie was playing a bunch of fast licks and all this, you know, the stuff that he did. And then BB would just wait and then just hit that one note, and it just like leveled the building.
Right.
I mean, it just literally was like Moses, you know, parting the Red Sea. I mean, literally one note, and it was just like, like right in the chest, you know, because I mean, as a little kid, I'm standing there and I don't really know what this is. So that was the impact that I would watch side stage, was BB King holding the people in his palm of his hand, being that entertainer, and then those one note. And that also taught me how to play guitar to a big room. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I went out as an opener on a lot of other rock gigs after that. And I would be like what I was just talking about. I would try to play a lot of fast runs that wouldn't translate in a big place, as opposed to like what BB, or like later on a further evolution of that is Angus Young. That same vibrato, that same major pentatonic style of playing is very BB and Freddie King, and so that works in big places. Playing faster works in smaller, more intimate, settings, I feel like. And I've talked to a lot of other great guitar players that agree.
Yeah.
So,
Wayne, you always make the joke about, how, the Kiss, and then you have Vinnie Vincent go out there and start, just throwing riffs everywhere where we're loose, and it wouldn't fit because it didn't fit the vibe of the room. Yeah. Whereas I was a big got me into blues was Hooker. So how Hooker would just keep the beat with the guitar. And everything was through his voice and through his inflection and everything. It wasn't through the guitar. And then you go to BB and all this, and then all the other guys, and Howlin' Wolf was definitely it was his voice and his just the vibrato and the passion out that's how he kept the room, and just how they all did the things. That's what got me into the whole genre, was that, just how they keep it, how they made something so simple so beautiful.
Right.
It's all in the minimalism of it.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, it just shows how universal music is. I mean, I'm a Latin kid born in Bronx, New York. Growing up, the only grass I saw was the kind you smoked. I didn't see any, I didn't, cotton fields. I didn't know what that was, but the music spoke to me. And then you think about it, and then it spoke to some guys in England named Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. You couldn't relate to it. And then we fast forward 40 years later, and some kid named Lance Lopez relates to it, So it's just how universal that music is, It's just incredible, really,
Absolutely.
I mean, you mentioned how young you were when it touched you, and you think about it, you probably have, since you do this for a living now, but you were not only going against the grain then, you're still going against the grain now, really, to this very day. Especially back then, I'm surprised managers you're committing career suicide, but you managed to do it. So hats off to you, Good job.
Yeah. And actually, you have a new album out. It just came out I think on July 14th, right?
That's right. That's right. It sure did.
Definitely, everyone go listen to that thing, because then that has no bad songs in it, and it just flies by.
It really doesn't. And like I mentioned before, this is more like a metal show and rock show. But
awesome. Thanks for having me.
This,
my people.
Yeah, and I listened to this album today. And I'm like, I think this might be one of my favorite albums of the year, because it's really, really good. I mean, I put it on, first song, I hear Led Zeppelin influences, and I hear Aerosmith influences, and throughout the album I hear some Kiss stuff, and just things that I listen to anyway, and just everything just sounds really good. And you co-produced the album too, right?
Right, absolutely. And thank you so much for recognizing that, because growing up as a kid, rock and the metal influences were heavy, and so I've been always categorized as a blues rock artist, not just a straight traditional blues guy.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted to do with Trouble Is Good, is to emphasize the rock aspect of being a blues rock artist. So I went to all of our friends that are my favorite guys that play rock today, like Brian Tichy and Bobby Rondinelli and Greg Bissonette and Jurgen Carlson from Government Mule and Danny Miranda from Blue Oyster Cult. Buck Johnson from Aerosmith and Hollywood Vampires, and Peter Keys from Leonard Skinner. We went out to all of our good friends that play rock, and then presented these blues influenced sort of rock songs. Everything. I'm a blues guitar player and a blues singer, so in that situation, and I think that's what made sense earlier about what we were talking about Bon Scott and those guys, is that. Yeah, but you put them in a song situation and it comes out that way. But yeah, at the core of it, that's why it's so real. That's why Bon Scott was so real. It's the blues. And so I think that's what we try to do here. We just putting it in a song format as opposed to just a traditional wide open blues jam type of setting.
Yeah.
Putting it in a more structured song and delivering it and presenting it in this way. With key players that we felt like would sonically deliver the song correctly. And that's what each song was really, we thought that out, especially when we were doing all this during COVID. We had time to kind of figure it out and wasn't like we got to hurry up and make a record real quick. It was like, let's really think this out and think about which player would be great on each track. And, you know, I wrote songs that I thought of Cozy Powell so much. Yeah. You know, I was a huge fan of Cozy's playing with Jeff Beck, with Black Sabbath, with, you know, Rainbow, of course. And Bobby Rondinelli and I had gone back to when I lived in New York in the early 2000s, and we had always wanted to play together. And so I was writing material and I thought, man, this would be perfect for Bobby. So, you know, and really thought in terms of if anybody could play like Cozy Powell, but still be themselves, it's Bobby. It was Bobby, because he not only replaced Cozy and Rainbow, he also replaced him in Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath, that's right.
In Black Sabbath. So it was, you know, and it was great to be in a live setting with Bobby. And we had Danny Miranda from Blue Oyster Cult playing bass. And Danny was also in Queen when Paul Rogers was singing. And so that was the first things we did once things opened during COVID, is that we came to Long Island and we all got in a room together and we played Trouble Is Good and Voyager and you know, a couple of other Uncivil War and just, you know, just got in a room and got to vibe and got to play. And it was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. We're like actually making a real album. You know, it was cool.
When you went on Long Island, did you go to a studio?
Yeah, we worked at Bob Stander's studio, Parcheesi. And it's in Huntington Station. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I went to a studio and actually Bobby Rondinelli was there. He came in while we were setting up and everything, and he just walks in the door. I'm like, oh my God, it's, you know, so it's pretty cool to actually get to meet him for the first time.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. I love Bobby, man.
Yeah, he's a very nice guy.
Yeah, he's great.
It really pains me to agree with Wayne, but I do agree with Wayne that your album is one of the best of the year. And it's funny because you know, Wayne's the one who introduced me to your music. You're literally a brand new artist to me. I've never heard your music. And Wayne goes, you know, give him a listen. And usually Wayne tells me, give him a listen. I'm like, I forget it.
It's not the best time. We haven't heard for a rough time.
Yeah, but he actually goes, Neil, you'll like him. And the way he sold me to you was he likes Jimi Hendrix. So there you go.
We do need to talk about those live Jimi Hendrix bootlegs after this, man.
But both of these gentlemen are correct. It is really.
Well, thank you.
I listened to that. I had to look it up. I was listening to something earlier, and this album. I know what I was listening to, Handmade Music. I don't and I like that album a lot, but this one I like even better. And I like the fact, first of all, the production is excellent. Yeah. You can hear everything clearly. Two, I don't know what you guys have been eating or whatever, or drinking, but keep doing that or smoking it, because the songwriting is phenomenal on it.
Yeah, it is. Trouble. I mean, I felt like you're trying it in the TriStar State was like I felt that, because you know, being in East Tennessee, knowing what Nashville used to be and what Nashville is now,
absolutely
broke my. It's like as soon as I heard it, I was like, that started breaking my heart, because I was like, you know, 20 years ago, this song would have been every honky tonk everywhere, and now it's you can't find it in anywhere, because there's like maybe one or two really solid acts out there going through the honky tonk circuit, and everything else is just another rehash of Wagon Wheel.
Right.
It's the worst. Because last year, I'm in the Air National Guard, and we were doing the Nashville unit there, and we had a week, and I took my wife was like, hey, I've never been downtown. Let me go downtown. And I swear to God, I heard Wagon Wheel in different key about 8 different places. Wow. But yet that one big guy who could shred a guitar with a freaking beer bottle was out there, and I was like, now that's an act.
Right. Trying in the TriStar State. Well, you know, and it's about landing here during COVID too, and like the things I did, and it kind of then encompasses Trouble Is Good, man, because I did other stuff during COVID. Like we were working on this record. I became a home recording engineer, and then I started repairing tube amplifiers here in Nashville. And oddly enough, when the pandemic happened, a lot of celebrities and a lot of big acts that were on the road, they were all shut down. So they went through their warehouses and just got all their broken gear that had been sitting there for 10 years and went, let's get all these 50 amps fixed right now. And they were just sending over truckloads of twin reverbs and Marshalls and bass rigs and Ampegs. And I was unscrewing amps and pulling tubes and replacing speakers. And that's what I did during COVID. And it was just what a blessing to have a job here. And we had to have all, precautions and masks and all this that we did, but it was very interesting, man. It was interesting times, but that's what I was doing during COVID, working for the Nashville Amplifier Service with Chad Sharp. I mean, just completely backed up, man. Like we couldn't even get to amps. It was crazy how that happened.
So you're going to be the reason why for Dolly's rock tour. You're going to be the one that gives all the amps for them.
That's right.
And we never say anything bad you'll never hear me say anything bad about our queen of the Appalachians. So
dude, like during COVID, like her story time, bro, that was like, I would lay on the edge of my bed with my pillow, dude. It's like at night, like going, okay, it's nighttime. Okay, Dolly, I love you.
Let Annie Dolly put you to sleep. Yeah, exactly.
And Dolly's reading story time, dude. You remember that? I don't know if you saw that.
100%. Yeah, it was all over
my
the state.
gosh.
Yeah, we had it all over on our local, one of the local independent music things. She had it on there. So like we had that. It was the best.
Oh my God.
Of course, she's a saint out here. So
it's a question. There's a question from Colin Madden. He says, "Can he retube his Blues Junior without rebiasing?"
Probably, but there's a couple of things you need to fix on a Blues Junior. That there's a couple resistors in there that you could mod out. That'll kind of, and there's a diode that'll blow too. You have to watch out for before those tubes blow. So just be careful of that. But yeah, I mean, you can absolutely try. I mean, as long as it's the same type of tube and if they're in the same rating, I mean, you got to know what those tubes are and if they're matched or not, and whatever they're matched to, make sure those tubes that you're replacing with are in those same number range, and then you'll probably be all right.
Lance, are you going to be doing any touring in the next few months to support the
album?
Man,
we're Labor Day weekend. We're starting in South Florida down in Naples. We got a one-off show we're doing in Indiana next week, and I'm doing some gigs in town this weekend, doing some private party stuff. But we got starting Labor Day weekend. It's going to be back touring and supporting the record, starting in South Florida. Then we're going into Texas and Louisiana, then up in the Midwest in the fall, then East Coast, and then also out to the Pacific Northwest. So we're going to kind of be all over the place.
Well, if you come to Tampa, Florida, I will be there. So
we're supposed to be in St. Petersburg, I think.
Oh, that's close enough. Where's
Cage Brewing, I think we're playing.
I'll be there. Cage Brewing.
St. Petersburg. Yeah, I think September, early September. I have to look at the day. It's on.
I'll look at your website. Yeah, but I'm going. Yeah,
I got the website up right now. September 7th.
Well, September.
Is that the day? Okay, cool. St. Petersburg. There you go. September 7th.
Well, I don't know if I'll get to meet you, but at least I'll get to see you live.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, absolutely, we'll meet for sure.
I'll tell you what. I'll meet you.
Hopefully, you'll hook me up.
I'll burn you those Jimi Hendrix bootlegs, at least 10 of them. All right. Okay, but you got to play them at the proper volume. Don't sin against Jimi Hendrix. Okay.
Do you have like a favorite song off the new album? Like, is there one song that's like a little bit more personal to you, or is there one that like you really loved working on?
I mean, they were all really cool. Voyager was really cool, man. I mean, Voyager was a really cool piece to work on, and like from start to finish, and kind of make it more of a prog thing. Really wanted. I was so super influenced by like bands like Rush and Yes and Mahavishnu Orchestra and all those bands like that, and so I started working on that piece when I first moved to Nashville, and I was hanging a lot with the great John Hyatt, singer-songwriter.
Oh, great singer-songwriter.
Yeah, and John gave me an acoustic to write songs on. And so I was working on all these weird tunings, and we actually had coffee one day, and he wrote down all these weird tunings I was working in, and songs like Easy to Leave and Open G and other things I was working on. I was using some weird C tunings. And I had this weird open A thing I was working on, and I was trying to figure out a melody and kind of what to really sing about and to work on through and work on it through. And so I had all these different parts, and we were working on work tapes at the Jam House and whatever. And it wasn't until I was also reading this crazy book called The Law of One, which is this super metaphysical thing about this chick having this extraterrestrial contact and all this. So I thought, like, hey man, those guys that made those great records read crazy books and then wrote, like Neil Peart read all these books and then wrote about it, and so I was like, how can I do that? What can I do that would be a trip? And so I was reading this Law of One book, and I was like, well, let's write about this character, and then let's pay tribute to a lot of the English artists that we loved so much growing up, Rainbow, Zeppelin, all the mystical bands, Yes, all those kind of bands. And really, I thought it was really cool. We had Michael Landau, and I'm a Gibson guy, by the way, get the Gibson guitar. But Michael Landau is a dear friend, a great session god out in LA. And, we know each other from the Baked Potato. He's a dear friend. He just came to Nashville and played. He came out with a signature series Stratocaster, and a producer I was working with here in Nashville got one, and I played it. And I was like, oh my God, this is the most incredible Strat I have ever played. And so I started into all this Richie Blackmore style. And so on the session, and it was warming up, and it was like, that's what we need to play and really pay tribute to was, I don't think I ever talked enough about that influence on me, Richie Blackmore's influence in Rainbow. And then having Bobby Rondinelli on the track, who played with Richie Blackmore, it was like, it made sense, especially him playing all the Cozy Powell licks and everything that he was playing made total sense for me. And then I had a Stratocaster with the right tremolo on it to be able to pull off some of the more of the Blackmore style riffs. And then also to be able to have the kind of the Jeff Beck spiritual kind of ascension tribute as a send off for Jeff at the end with the whammy, with the tremolo piece at the end. So, I mean, and then the beginning was interesting with Peter Keys and I and Doug Bossy, and I was playing a Middle Eastern oud, which is like a Middle Eastern lute, so just putting it all together like that it was very different than just like putting together a blues thing. The title track was like that, but we did it more in a Delta blues kind of chain gang blues kind of way with an intro and an ending. So those two, the title track and Voyager, were really, really fun to make.
Yeah. Was this the most fun that you've had making an album? Because it sounds like you had a lot of fun making it.
Yeah, you can hear that you had a great time making the album for sure. You can hear it.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it was just, we had, I think during COVID, it was like we kind of had time to make it right and do what we needed to do and get it right. And so I think that was what was cool. And then to really, to hear these songs in this way, and then to grit the right players together like Brian Tichy and Bobby Rondinelli and all these great drummers and that we all love and adore, and bass players and keyboard players, and have them on these records and each song, and it sonically come out on the record the way that I heard it in my mind was the greatest accomplishment of the record. That's what was so great for me. It was like, this is what I heard in my head, and then we were able to amass the right guys together in the same room to make it
happen. Yeah, very cool. Now, I love your singing voice. Did you always want to sing and play guitar, or did you how did you feel about your singing?
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. No, I did. I mean, I think it was Bobby Bland that kind of showed me gospel music, and it was like, you're going to be a singer and you need to be a singer. And I got to play with a lot of great singers, and I tried to mimic and listen to what they listened to, and just mimic those records. I mean, I was kind of showed how to do that, and that's what we did. I mean, we just kind of mimicked those albums, and and just kind of learned to sing that way, and then it was go out on the road and try to do it. And so I feel like my singing is definitely developed in a certain way. I've had great gospel singers. The great Kirk Franklin, he came out of the studio one day and he heard me singing. He goes, man, that ain't nothing but whiskey and cigarettes.
See, like, Bon Scott would be proud of that, Lance.
That's really cool.
Yeah, don't try that at home, though, kids.
Yeah, but I definitely love your singing style and the guitar playing and everything. And like you said, the album is really good. And I also love how every song is its own thing. You know, not a lot of times in the metal albums that we listen to lately, everything just sounds the same. You can't tell one song from the other. But on your album, everything is just like its own thing, and you remember the songs. You know, I remember some of the stuff that I heard. So it's really great, and I really enjoy it, and I hope it does really well for you.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Yeah, man. I mean, that was the whole point, was to make a record. You know, I wanted to make a record. This is one of the reasons why we put it out on orange vinyl too. I wanted to make a record that, you know, that we could get like we did back in the old days. And, you know, you got the record, you took the plastic off, you took the album out. And that was what was so cool about it being orange vinyl. And, you know, and then you put it on the record player, and then you put whatever on the album cover and twist up whatever you want, and, you know, pass it around with your buddies and listen to the, I mean, you know, that was what we did as kids, you know, that was the thing. It's what we did. And those were monumental times for me. I mean, that's when music just like sunk into my heart. And I went, oh my God, when I heard Physical Graffiti for the first time like that, you know, when I heard Are You Experienced for the first time like that, you know, when I heard, you know, And Justice for All, you know, like that for the first time. I mean, hearing monumental masterpieces like that for the first time on vinyl were incredible. So I don't want to say that our record is like some monumental masterpiece, but I wanted to make a classic album that you could put on and sit down, and it had that flow that you just described. I mean, thank you so much for getting it, because that was what we wanted to do, man.
Well, congratulations, Lance. You
totally
succeeded. You succeeded.
Thanks,
man. Colin Madden, he says he's sorry you tuned in a little late, and I know you did talk about Buddy Miles a little bit earlier on, but do you have any other stories about Buddy Miles and the time you were spending with him?
Oh man, I mean, we just had so much fun, Buddy and I. You know, I just remember, you know, one of the most monumental moments with Buddy was Buddy taking me to meet Prince. You know, he took me to meet, and I didn't even know Prince was in town. Like, he was in Dallas, I guess 2002 maybe. And Prince and Buddy called me, and he goes, you need to be at my house tomorrow. We're going to go see Prince, you know, put on all your stuff. And that was that. So I was at Buddy's house at like 9 a.m. and a limo came and picked us up. And it was like, we literally all had our stage clothes on, you know, we like literally are piling into this limo at 9 a.m. and we go to Fair Park Music Hall. And we get backstage, and Buddy's looking around, and he's backstage. He's going, Prince! And he's like literally yelling his name. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm just like, serious? And Maceo Parker comes out, you know, and I turn around and look at him, I'm like, oh my God, there's Maceo from James Brown's band. I was like, oh my God, Maceo. You know, and then a door opens up next to me, and I think a child is coming out. I go, oh my God, and I literally said, oh my God, there's kids back here, and it was Prince.
Oh, oh wow.
I mean, that's a true story. I'm not, dude, I'm just being honest. Like, and then
he's going to challenge you to basketball
later. And he just turned and looked at me. He was like, what's up, brother? Hey, man. Totally cool. Just like, hey, what's up, man? Just come on in. And he was back there with his old lady, and he came out of the room, and it was just like family. It was like, holy, he was just like, hey, what's up, man? Glad y'all are here. Let's go jam.
Colin Madden wants to know, did he challenge you to a basketball game?
No, we just had a jam session. That was it.
Then he served you pancakes.
No pancakes. I wish I had some pancakes right now.
Well, very cool. And everybody needs to go check out your new album, Trouble is Good. It's a really great album. Like I said before, everybody just needs to go check it out. And where can people go and buy the CD and check out more about you?
They can get the music. It's on, you can go to our website, lancelopez.net. We've got links to order. It's on all your platforms, you know, your Spotify, your Apple Music, YouTube, all your, you know, down streaming places you can go. And then Cleopatra Records, their website, you know, and the limited edition orange vinyl is if anybody's into vinyl, I mean, it's a really cool thing. There's not very many that we're printing. It's a limited thing, so it'd be cool to nab one of those. It'll be cool later on, hopefully one day. But yeah, man, and then all your normal places. So Trouble Is Good, and then check out our tour dates at lancelopez.net for sure.
Very cool. And
don't let me forget Instagram at Lance Lopez Guitar. I should give us a follow.
Yeah, follow him on everything. Is vinyl your thing? Are you into the vinyl? Are you into the Spotify?
I'm into vinyl. Yeah, it was such a big part of my childhood, man. And flipping through records in a record store is there's just something that's just an art that we have in rock and roll, man, that we just should not ever lose. I just don't feel like. I feel like it's such a part of rock and roll, man. Record stores and the hangs in record stores and putting on the record and the needle dropping. I mean, just the whole everything that it surrounds, man. I mean, that's
it's amazing to see that come back like it did.
It's a ritual.
When I was younger, I was like, who wants records? Because CDs were getting big. But now that they came back and everything, and I started collecting it, it's just out of hand now. But it's cool. It's a really cool thing.
I'll stick with the CDs and bourbon. Okay.
CDs and bourbon. That's a country song right there, dude.
A real one, like Waylon Jennings used to say. I did a joke with these guys. What was it? If you only have musical taste if you like Waylon Jennings. If you don't, you might want to acquire some taste.
Since this is a metal show, favorite metal band?
Oh my God. Dude, that's favorite metal band. That's way too hard, man. Oh my God, there's so many. I'm like,
or is there like a new one that maybe you're into?
A new metal band. I don't know. I'm just so stuck on the old school guys. It's really been interesting watching the transition of Pantera.
Oh yeah.
Now, growing up in that circle in that world, it's just so hard to get away from that world. I was just so fortunate to know Dime and Benny and be a part of that circle in Dallas, and play with musicians from that world and know, all the production team and guys that were on the road with them. And I mean, sneaking into shows like we were talking about earlier, sneaking into shows and seeing them at the Basement in Dallas, when I was just a kid. My older brother would go in and then have somebody take his ID out to me in the parking lot, and I would reuse his ID. And I told Jeff, the owner, not very long ago, I told him, I was like, this is probably 10, 15 years ago. I went to him and apologized. I was like, man, Jeff, I was like, man, I'm so sorry. I told Jeff Shattle, I was like, dude, I'm so sorry I was sneaking. He goes, dude, we knew you guys. But man, it was like, fuck, dude, you weren't fooling. We let you like, stop. I'm so sorry for sneaking in your club back in the day. He's like, dude, you weren't fooling anybody, bro.
It's a
but
different
it was
time.
cool to see that. So it's hard to get away from Pantera. I mean, it's just, it's just such a Texas heart thing, man, and to be there as a kid and watch it happen. And
were you around for the Glamterra days?
Oh my God, they used to come over as a kid in the 80s in Shreveport. We had a club called the Circle and the Square, which and a lot of anybody around that area, they know Circle and the Square. Stevie Ray used to play there. To T-Birds, like everybody that was it was a mid-level room in the early 80s. And so they would come there and play. There was a band called Militia that used to open for them. And it was Diamond Daryl at that time.
Right. Yeah.
And that was pre Phil.
Yeah.
And Phil and I actually went not at the same time, but we actually went to the same high school down in New Orleans.
Oh, really?
So we actually went to the same school. So there was just a weird connection of how, that New Orleans, Dallas thing again with Phil and them. And so it was, it was interesting to watch Down and all those bands at that time, Crowbar and all those bands kind of happen around New Orleans and us having Pantera and then kind of all the bands that were in the orbit of Pantera, like Big Iron and then later on Drowning Pool that rose to great success out of Dallas. So Dallas had a big heavy metal community, and I was a big part of it, and actually would take metal guys from metal bands that would kind of splinter or do whatever. I would take them on the road to go play blues rock gigs with me. You know, we would go to Europe and you know, I was taking guys on the road and you know, so yeah, I mean, I was always, you know, part of that scene. But yeah, it's as far as favorite metal, I mean, you know, and I have to go back to the classic big three. When I really delve into metal, I have to think of Zeppelin, Sabbath, and Deep Purple. I mean, I just go to the very core and the apex and then just, you know, go down from there, because it's just so hard for me to say one genre, because I go from Dio to Metallica to Motorhead to I mean, it's just I just can't. I'm like, whoa.
That sounds like a lot like a story like when I was, you know, when I moved out to Tennessee when I was 16, and I grew when I was growing up, bands like 10 Years, Whitechapel, and all those, and like Straight Line Stitch and all those guys were coming up through. They were in high school learning how to do it, and you know, and they were doing the battle of the bands and everything. So like I got to watch those guys at a very young age, and it's just cool to see some of those people pop up and actually be what they are today. Because it is cool to like come up with like different things. Like I know Shreveport's a completely different music scene than say like East Tennessee, and you know, but it's same but different because it's a little lower level. No one really, but you get to know these guys at a very core level. So I always think that's super cool.
No, it's very similar. I mean, you know, playing and living in East Texas as well. I mean, East Tennessee and East Texas are very, very similar. And we had a big connection going back and forth back in the day. I mean, we played Sassy Ann's in Knoxville.
Sassy Ann's.
Dude, for years, man. I mean, you know, it was crazy. And we just played, I think, at the Brickyard, not very long. I mean, the Brickyard was our first gig out of COVID. I mean, that was the first gig we played when COVID ended was in Knoxville. So, you know, it was great. And then going out, my favorite part of the world is out there at Sevierville and Gatlinburg and all that out there. That's where I reconnect and get super creative, I think. That's why I love it out there so much.
You hear everybody with the fiddles and everything, the mandolins just going nuts out there. And you're like,
oh, God,
how do these people not have record deals and everything when they're just super talented and they're just on the side of the road playing at some, like they're playing at like Old Smokies, you know, little stage right there.
Right.
Ripping it.
Right. Yeah. East Tennessee, man. I love it, man. I love it. Absolutely.
All right. Very cool. Anybody got anything else?
Just want to thank you for coming on, Lance. It was a great meeting.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
No, thank you guys so very much for having me. Thank you so much for all the kind words about the record. And I hope to see you guys soon. And, yeah, man, September 7th, Cage Brewing in St. Petersburg, man. We hope to see you.
I'll be there.
Okay, man. Good to see you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Dr. John is a great excuse for me because I absolutely adored him.
Oh, that's awesome, man. All right, well, you guys take care, man. I'll see you guys soon.
All right,
take care.
Good. Everybody go buy Trouble Is Good and go to ratsaladreview.com. Also hit subscribe here on where the hell are we? YouTube. Hit it on YouTube.
Yeah, hit that YouTube subscribe button
next week.
All right, thanks, guys.